immediately kind of made a little cohort with my son and my daughter and their families, and my mother was living in the next door house. She's 84, so we've been seeing all the both grandkids, and my very cautious, not going to the stores and just ordering stuff in, but opening up now. So grades 1 to 4 started a week ago, second week now, and then we are anticipating that high school will be starting next week, which is where I am. So we're kind of trying to see how that goes.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let's dive in, and I've already pressed record, so we'll edit
Okay.
it. But yeah, I'll just kind of walk through a few of those things, and I'd just love to hear your perspective, and kind of, you're definitely farther ahead of the game than most, so that's great. And so I know you're at a high school, but what's your specific role there?
Well, I used to be teacher and school leader both, but last year I got a 20% position at the University of Oslo. So now I'm out of teaching. So I'm a school leader, and then I work 20% for the university, which is a very cool thing because they tie together research and practitioners and make kind of webinars and workshops for teachers and school leaders, where they have both the research behind it, but also what we know works and doesn't work in school. So that's interesting. And yeah, and then I also have, I'm also leading what we in Norway kind of call a school counseling department that takes care of all the kids who have needs for special, education, not special education, but, kind of helping them if they have something at home or they're sick or stuff like that. So, and then the 12th of March at school, we gathered around and looked at TV, and the Prime Minister shut down everything from the 13th of March. So we haven't had our students in high school since then.
So let's just maybe back up a little bit and talk a little bit more specifically about the Norway experience in terms of, like you said, when things sort of shut down, what happened to the schools, and sort of what's happened between. I know you're in the process of getting and have kids back at school at the elementary level, but what's that look like? Just give me a sort of a timeline of how things have gone over the last 6 or 8 weeks.
Yeah, 8 weeks. I wrote this. I'm working on this now. I wrote this book, The Digital Classroom, in 2015, and then the second edition came last summer. And I've been kind of struggling to get teachers to look into this and start working like this. So when everything shut down, some were, but some were not, and they were this whole community of teachers helping each other, giving them ideas of how to work online. But of course, that it's not something that you just snap and then you have the perfect teaching and learning environment when the students are at home. So I'm actually going to talk on national television tomorrow morning about some surveys they've had about kids who have fallen way, way behind because they just kind of logged out of this. And especially the young kids, because 7, 8, 9-year-olds can't do this on their own. So it's very dependent on the parents, if they were able to help them or not. So we're going to see a lot of things in the aftermath of this. And we still, of course, don't know when we start up again with high school. I'm sure that we're only going to start with one of the levels. We have 3 years in high school in Norway. And I predict that we're going to start with the seniors so that they get to go to school before they graduate. All the exams have been canceled in Norway. It's a big deal because we all rely a lot on exams. And we are now, trying to organize, okay, these kids come in this entrance, they come in here. We don't want too many at the same time. What kind of teaching? Is it just for testing that we're opening up the school now? Or is it for them to socialize and meet each other before they say goodbye? Or is it for learning things they have? So I don't know. It's learning by every day, I think.
And your school year would end at somewhere around the end of June, is that
No, yeah, like 19th of June or something like
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay. So when this all went down, and what was sort of the date that everybody went into lockdown and school was done face to face?
Friday
Date.
13th.
Okay, so that was pretty well standard. Well, I mean, that date is fairly. It's going to be an infamous date, Friday the 13th, 2020. And at that point, what kind of messages did teachers have? And again, not that at first, but as the sort of the next week or two unfolded, what were teachers being told their priorities were and what the expectations would be? And maybe, you can maybe speak from high school or more broadly, if possible too. Like what were they being told their job was?
Well, I think it was up to the schools, because the farther away you are from the classroom now, it's like the teachers are there, and then you have the school leaders, but then you have the administrators sitting and governing all the schools, but they were kind of just locked out of it all. So we had a much better feel of what was going on. So, and I have my blog, I write there, and I had been predicting this before it happened, and I was recommending that we follow our timetable, usual timetable at school. And we have a great advantage at my school because we have block scheduling. We've been doing that since 2008. And it's basically that we have almost only one subject each day. So we have like English class would be from 8:30 till 1, and then perhaps physical education or history after that. But basically, and no more than 2 subjects for a day. So the kids have ample time to dig into the material with their teacher and then work with it, and then, hand in assignments in a week perspective, perhaps. So what worked well at our school was that I immediately started, we went into Teams, of course, everyone did, and then also Zoom. But I made Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I had scheduled meetings at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for teachers, calling it teachers who want to figure out more about how to teach this way, and teachers who know how to do it and would like to help those other teachers. And that was really smart, because we immediately got some the math teachers who were very good at this, and they met up every time and helped other teachers. I had teachers cry at that meeting because they were overwhelmed. And they said, I'm never ever going to be able to do this. And our school is very advanced in technology, so I can imagine how it would be for other schools. I can't imagine that all other school leaders did that. They had that constant helpline that just come in here, we're going to help you, low threshold. It's just, we're going to figure this out together. And so it was. And then it was having to move away from the written assignments, because teachers were worried about that, of course, because they could Google things. So it was had to make projects that the kids could kind of ask the questions, and then they would have to have like, if I was your teacher, I would have to ask you now what you knew, and have it online like this instead of the written. So it was a big change for the teachers, right?
So just from a student perspective, then, one of the issues that I hear, and it it varies, is the amount of access that that students and families have. There are certainly situations where I've heard up to like 30 to 40% of students don't even have internet access or devices, and so it's everything from trying to get them devices to creating packets of written material that gets shipped out. How do you sort of classify the demographics in for where you teach, in terms of how many students actually can transition easily enough because they have access and support and so forth?
So Norway in a whole is a very kind of rich country. I'm not saying that there aren't poor people here, but
Sure.
most very so. And already in, I don't know, 2010 or something, every high school student got a computer from the school. And then gradually they had to buy them, but they got stipends for that. So all our high school teachers have their own, now students have their own computers. And but you know, and we're stubborn to Oslo, so it's kind of affluent place where I live. In Oslo, we have a lot of people from different cultures, and that certainly is a problem there. Hasn't been that much at my school, but we have opened up for like a handful of kids who have that problem at home, so that they're allowed to sit at our school and work. But you know, gradually opening up for that. But mostly we're okay there.
So it's interesting though, and again, just help me with a little bit more context, because I mean everybody, and I mean you maybe you're sick of it, I don't know, but like everybody hears about Finland, right? Like how awesome Finland is and how progressive Finland is, and they get a lot of the accolades, and Pasi Sahlberg obviously has led that, and you know I'm always a little bit aware of the fact that you know sometimes Canada gets accolades, and I go, yeah, it's not as great as people think it is, right? All that being said, how does Norway match up to Finland and even Sweden in terms of that education philosophy and the way things are? Is it very similar? Is it say, yeah, we kind of do this? Because you mentioned testing, and that's something that I don't know that Finland, from the things I've read, have embraced to the same degree. So can you just maybe give a quick comparison of those two?
I think we're moving slowly toward Finland. I think one of the good things Finland did very early on was that every teacher had to have a master's degree, and then they're highly paid. So it's a you know, respected profession. I think that helps. And then they highly rely on the teachers, and they're trying to do the same in Norway. I think they could do more of that, so that you know you trust that the teachers do the right job there, and then you don't have to have all these exams. And I'm trying to advocate for that in Norway now. That perhaps we should, you know, do we have to have these exams? We didn't do that this year, but I'm thinking they might fall back to the same old. So yeah, I think Finland is doing better than we are. We are now in the middle of a new kind of reform, which I have great hopes for. It's starting in the fall. So a lot more student voice and choice, as I used to call it, which I like. So I think that is good. It takes a long time to change the minds of the teachers, you know,
Yeah.
that they come into the classroom, they feel they have to teach. And if they do that, they're happy. And then if the students do all the learning on their own, they feel like they should have been doing more things. So it's, yeah, no, Finland is a good country to look to, I think. Yeah.
So as you've said, your elementary students went back this week or the week before?
Last week.
Last week.
Before,
and
yeah.
High school is preparing to go back. I know in this conversation, because right now, I think the only place I know is Quebec. The province of Quebec is looking at sending elementary students back. I don't know if they pushed it back to next week but they want to do it. Whereas most places either have not had a date or have basically said it's just not going to happen, right? And with that, people then start thinking about what's next, and people are very uncertain about the fall even. And in that conversation, people begin to talk about how things might change and how we might learn from this experience. What I'm wondering is, in the Norway case, because you're, you know, very soon going to be going back, is this 8-week hiatus teaching you things, and do you think there will be an impact of that, or is this just like a crisis that happened, and once you go back, it'll just go back to the way it was before? Have there been lessons that have been really that you conversations that are had about where people are saying, you know what, this is what I'm learned from this time? Or is it just like, this was just a blip in time and just go back to what we always did?
I wish I knew the answer to that one. I'm hoping the latter, though, that they learn something from it. I'm sure that they will take things from the digital learning that they thought was good. We're not going to take this Zoom way of learning, obviously. It's strange because, you know, the 13th of March, we stayed at home. And then we were kind of working towards Easter. That was kind of the first goal. And then Easter came and we had holiday. It's very long in Norway. And then we came back and we were like in this limbo land because nobody knew anything. We've been working towards Easter. That was a goal. And then after that, it's like, so people lose their energy or remain, or it's like everyone is different, and people get Zoom fatigued, and students drop out, students don't drop. It's like every aspect of this is, it's like no conclusion, but very many students really miss school. They miss their friends, they get depressed. It's and family situations probably aren't that good sometimes, and so I'm hoping pockets of what was successful will be brought further on when things normalize. I think the leaders in the schools need to kind of follow up on that, and that's what I've been doing with my team. We still meet and talk about what worked well, what we continued working this way, or I really don't know, Dean, if it's going to be like lights off and then back to normal. I don't think so, but you never know. Depends, I
Well,
guess.
I mean, and again, lots of it just sort of just, you see the waves of conversation, and sometimes it would be an individual teacher who just, you mentioned some of your teachers who are maybe growing through this because of the collaboration that you put in place. The part I wonder about is, like, there's the whole conversation about the power of digital, and kind of, oh, it enables us to do things, and so maybe people are discovering that. But to me, um, the conversation about the socialization and the connections and the community that schools offer, that
Mm-hmm.
perhaps we've underestimated or underappreciated. And it's just the fact that, well, kids come together and then that socialization just happens, and it does. At the same time, how can we say, but that was really important? And how can we then, as schools, think about, like, how do we make that intentional? How do we take advantage of it? How do we build social learning, not just into what happens in the hallways and in between the learning, but actually as part of the learning? That's a really key thing. And I'm not convinced that we get that part of it. Like, that's the part, that the conversation that I'm trying to push and trying to think, like, it's kind of cool that people come together in a building and spend time together. So, like, we know how we feel as humans when we're away from our friends, right? Like, there's a gap. It feels
Mm-hmm.
odd. So, that's the part I'm wondering about. How do we, and I don't know what the Norwegian school experience is like in terms of the emphasis on that social piece, as opposed to an academically driven system.
It's both. My dream school. I know Will Richardson has been tweeting about changing school now, and a lot of articles talking about that as well. My hope for school would have been that we meet brick and mortar, we socialize, we learn together, we got skin all this, that learning is learning together. But then at the same time, if you need to take your learning home and sit a couple of days and work on your own and
Sure.
then come back, that's because that's what teachers do. If they say, oh, I have to go home and do this work because I can't concentrate, I'm sharing rooms with 3 or so. And that's not been easy to do in Norway, because we have this new rule that you have to be, attendance has to be these many days, hours, and they don't evaluate you if you don't have that, even if you're a bright student. And I'm so upset by that, because I think that the motivation in the student is not the punishment or the grades. It's hopefully, I want to learn something. I want to go on. I want to learn how to learn. I want to find good questions. I want to find answers to those. I want to, deep learning. I want to work globally. I want to do something great. That would be my dream. But yeah, so hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, again, all of those things are in play, and it's just, it will be interesting to see how this plays out. So, just for, I'm curious as well, if you take off your educator hat for a second, and again, Sweden's getting a lot of talk around the way they've handled the crisis in terms of being less restrictive than most countries, and depending on what you read, sometimes that's going really well. Sometimes that people are saying this is a terrible decision. Can you just sort of give me a sense of how Norway is handling this versus Sweden, and kind of what the vibe is amongst the people?
In the beginning, I know people in Norway were happy that we did it our way, and then people in Sweden were very happy they did it that their way. And they have a lot of trust in Sweden that people will behave and everything will work out. In every country, I think they have made a big mistakes with the senior house homes and with the elderly. I mean, I don't think any country has done well there. Not Norway either. So that's kind of where it's gone bad for many countries, and Sweden especially. They have like 10 times more deaths than we have, and we are half the size. So it's not terrible, but it's not. We're certainly better. We are in a position where we have a lot of money in Norway because of the oil funds we had. So we are able to help people a lot. I mean, Sweden also has to do that, of course, but we're always the country that had more money than the Swedes. So I don't know if that factors into it. What factors into it is, like, I think in Canada and Norway, when the government says something to us, then we say, okay, we
Yeah.
trust our governments. In the US, I don't know what the hell is going on there, but they don't, and I can understand why. And if they lose their jobs, they lose everything, right? That's not going to happen for us. So if they say stay home, we stay home. Of course, some don't, but mostly we do. So it's not spreading, and it's kind of manageable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you are along with schools then going back in session. Is there any sort of restrictions then around, like you said, they haven't identified, you think that they're going to let seniors back first, senior students back first, any, like even in the elementary setting now, is it like all elementary kids are back in the
No,
schools? Any other restrictions they put in place?
no, that's 1 to 4
Okay.
started, and kindergarten and 1 to 4, and they have cohorts of like 15 in the lower grades, and then they have 20 in the higher grades. So 1 to 4, then they're still missing 5, 6, 7 in the primary school, and then 8, 9, 10 is the middle school, and then 3 years of high school. And probably they would like to be sure that the last year of primary school get back so that they can kind of say goodbye, and then before they go on, and the same with middle school, that they can come and say goodbye before they go to high school, and then same with the high school students, that they can kind of bond, and we send them off to university. But we don't know. They're going to tell us on Thursday at 4 o'clock.
And they're enacting physical distancing then
Yeah,
in those places as much as possible, which I'm
yeah,
baffled by how that could happen in a kindergarten classroom. Just
yeah. Well,
being the way they are.
it's working. It's a meter
Yeah.
distance. Yeah. If you don't have symptoms and you don't cough and you're not very close, the chances of getting it are very small. But of course, you can be contagious at 24 hours before you get the symptoms. So you have to have small groups, and if something happens, then this group has to stay home for 2 weeks, and then they can come back. So that's the way it has to be.
Well, we're all at everything is sort of a new start. We're now in a new phase of trying to figure out what's next, and still all the unknowns and so forth. But yeah, interesting conversations with education, and I'm grateful to be able to speak with you about understanding your situation. So thanks for taking the time to share a little bit, and I've learned a little bit more, and I hope one day soon you can make it over here, or maybe I can come over there, and we can get
Yeah,
together and
yeah,
learn from each other one more time.
yeah. I wonder if ISTE and stuff like that, when that will happen again with all those people. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to know.
Well, again, it'd be great we'll connect one of these days again. So
We
thanks,
will.
Anne, for
We
your
will.
time.
Yeah.
Have a great rest of your day.